We've really changed up how you get started up and going with the draft. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that before we jump in with both feet. I'm going to be using a little, probably steal this from John Gets Games. I'm going to be using a little color-coded player order here to help me keep track. So first player here is going to be blue, clockwise to green and to yellow. And if you recall with the base game, we used to just have a real simple draft. We just picked a player board, about as easy as it can get. When we added upstairs, downstairs, we started drafting short servants. We're now going to combine those two, and we're going to get more complicated because there is a module in the characters expansion called the Distinguished Family Members. And the Distinguished Family Members are enhanced favors for each of the family members. So when you actually pull your box out of the storage, you're going to have in that box not only a standard set of family cards, but you're going to have a distinguished set of family cards. And these are going to be all the same from family to family. The favor boosts that are in the distinguished set are identical. Of course, I'm holding Asquith here. Asquith has a dowager who has a unique boost, but we'll get to that. So when you actually draft your player board, you're now going to be identifying which distinguished family member you want to have as part of your asymmetrical startup. So if I were to choose the heir here, instead of having a choice between 100 pounds and 1 reputation, the distinguished family heir has a choice between 200 pounds and 2 reputation. Whoever picks that heir, for example, I exclude everybody else from being able to choose that particular family bonus. And so it gives us some increased asymmetry. It also makes the player board choice a more powerful choice because we've got two things, an asymmetrical distinguished family member as well as the player board family bonus. So we are now going to do a snake draft. And when we do a snake draft, you're very familiar with it. We do it with our starter guest draft. That's where we start from one position, draft one, draft two, and swing back. We're going to do that with our family board and our short servants over here for the upstairs downstairs expansion. The logic of a snake draft is that there's no particular advantage at any position in the player order, because while they draft first, they also draft last. And while this person is last to draft, if we go clockwise, they then get to do consecutive drafts, and they can maybe shoot for a little synergy, and you'll see how that plays out. So there are two limbs to the snake draft. One is the family board, one is the short servant. But we don't restrict it. We're not going to go all family boards out this way and then come back with all servants. It's wide open. Blue starts out and they've got a delicious choice. Do I get after that cook or maybe that useful man? Or do I want to zero in on a particular combo of a distinguished family member? Now, one of the aspects of the distinguished family member is that the Howard board, they do not get distinguished family members. Insert sad face here. That's because the Howard board is by far and away the most overpowered board. One of the weakest boards is the Asquith board, and so they get a superpowered dowager that they alone can choose. 200 pounds, and the ability of our rather sharp dowager to tongue lash a servant right back to available service from whatever activity that she just attended. But this wide open draft means I've got a choice. I may choose the cook. Then it swings over here, and green's got to decide, do I want to get after that useful man? Do I want to go to maybe Asquith now, or maybe get to York? Because the sideboard requires a lot of footmen, so there's a little bit of a premium placed on footmen. And then we get here, and this person drafting last, Mr. Yellow, can choose both their board and their servant at the same time. So they're the only one that gets to have control over some synergy. And we swing back and finish here. So let's see how that looks. So I've shifted everything over so that we can see our servants when we draft. But before I begin the draft, I want to bring up on the screen the family members so you know what they're drafting. These are the distinguished family members, and if we start with the gentleman of the house, we find that his favor increased from 200 pounds to 300 pounds. The lady of the house has a fascinating ability, which is in addition to her standard favors on the right, on the left she has a prerequisite that allows her to exempt a guest that's attending an activity that she is at of needing a personal servant. Think about those 6th level dukes and marchionesses that require 2 servants. She can get it down to 1. That's really big. Then we get to the heir of the house. We talked about him. He doubles up his choice from 101 reputation to 202 reputation. Next we get to the young lady. And this young lady is special because she is the cream of the crop amongst the Derbyshire families, because you can see her admirer bonus goes from 2 to 3. In addition, note that she loses her casual guest invite in favor for being able to refresh a family member from the discard pile. Very important to plan around that, because if you select this young lady, that means you have only one casual guest invite in your family cards. That is going to leave you behind the 8-ball as far as expanding your gentry deck, so you need to pay attention to your starter guests in order to get replacements for those missing invites. And lastly, we met the Dowager and her sharp tongue. She's got great abilities. So, let's get started with the draft. Well, Mr. Blue, who's beginning our draft as first player, he starts looking through this. He goes, let's not waste time. He's sold on the cook. He wants the cook. That's who he's going to take. Mrs. Green, on the other hand, is torn now between the useful man and York here on top because of the need for footmen. And so Mrs. Green is going to take York, and she is going to take, she's going to take the heir. It gives her a little flexibility for reputation. Now notice that we're using the Asquith cards. You might ask, why are we using the Asquith cards? Why doesn't she have her cards? Well, this is a little accounting trick. So all possible distinguished family members that can be drafted are right here with Asquith, because they're the ones that have the Dowager. So when York takes the Asquith heir, that's just a marker. When they get their box, which is right over there waiting, they'll just switch up for their York family member. It's a nice way to do the accounting with only one set of cards. Now we get over to this fascinating choice here. Look, even though they're last, they have a shot at the second best servant, and they have a shot at the second best family. Now they're thinking that Howard, even though they don't come with a distinguished family member, is very interesting for that cook. But I think they want Asquith, and they want the power of that Dowager. Not only does that really give them 3 family members with money, takes care of a money issue early, but it also allows them to push that footman over if you want to go back-to-back on the main gazebo and the bowling green, or push the butler over if you want to go back-to-back on the private study and the hiring, although it would be an early hire. So that's who they're taking, and look what they get to do. They get to package in the useful man, which will also benefit from that Dowager's tongue lashing to allow more frequent use of the useful man. If there's no servants' quarters, that can be invaluable. Now we swing back here, and we have only a servant to draft for York. And York's a little bummed out. One thing that's very attractive is to take that lady's maid, because if I have 2 footmen and I have 2 ladies' maids and I get a brushing room, her service is completely done amongst the traditional servants. But the screening ability is too powerful, so York is going to take that, Mrs. Green's going to take that, and then our lonely cook here needs a family. They obviously cannot take Howard, because that would be 2 cooks, so they're going to go for the money play. And they're going to take the young lady. They like the idea of that late game admirer bonus and the ability to refresh a family member to pull off big events late. And so our draft is done.